an original 1950s Rodgers and Hammerstein musical that was seen only once until the 21st century. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Let's Chat, the podcast where we discuss movies, TV, and theater like old friends. I am your host, Dee, a casual consumer of visual media who enjoys chatting about them. Today we discuss Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, which aired on CBS television on March 31st, 1957. The synopsis from the official website of Rodgers and Hammerstein reads as follows. Cinderella, forced into a life of household chores by her wickedly cruel stepmother and stepsisters, dreams of a better life. The town crier announces a royal ball at which the prince of the kingdom intends to find a bride, and Cinderella wishes she could attend. When her stepsisters and stepmother go off to the ball, a fairy godmother appears and magically grants Cinderella's wish. At the ball, Cinderella and the prince meet and instantly fall in love, but she abruptly excuses herself at midnight, leaving only a glass slipper on the palace steps. After an extensive search throughout the kingdom, the prince and Cinderella are magically reunited and blissfully married. End quote. This musical stars Julie Andrews as the title character, Ilka Chase as Cinderella's stepmother, she's not given a name, Kay Ballard as stepsister Portia, Alice Ghostley as stepsister Joy, Dorothy Stickney as Queen Constantina, Howard Lindsay as King Maximilian, John Cipher as Prince Christopher, and Edie Adams, billed as Edith Adams, as fairy godmother. The show was directed by Ralph Nelson. What was my relationship with this show? What was your relationship with the show? Let me know. But my relationship with it was one of intrigue and longing. This TV special was to be seen only once, and that was before I was born. Since there are two other remakes that have been made and were available for home viewing during my youth, the 1957 version was the lost part of that collection, the one that people had heard about, but I had only seen in images. That is until the 21st century when it finally became available for home entertainment. I was an adult by then, seeing this film for the first time, and it was as if my inner child could finally take a deep breath and relax with the entire set. The 1957 version, 1965 with Leslie Ann Warren, and 1997 with Brandy as Cinderella. Well, let's talk about this musical. Considering that this was only a production to be seen once, lots of work and effort went into creating it. The live TV show was broadcast with commercials, so there needed to be quick costume changes for the magical clothes and transformations, just as one would need in a theater, while also appearing calm and into the scene. There was a live horse in front of the carriage that we are to imagine takes Cinderella to the ball. We do not really see the horse move, but we see the lead, Cinderella, inside of a jostling carriage while no longer seeing the horse. But the live horse, even for a split second, just standing there, was not what I expected. For a live television show, I'm not expecting livestock or anything like that. So they really did put in so much effort that I can't even imagine the lengths to which they went just to put on this one production. However, the limitations of live television can be felt as well. In the song, The Prince is Giving a Ball, there are cutaway shots to the villagers discussing their excitement. I wish that he'd propose to me. You know, they're saying, I wish I were a younger girl. I wish I were an older girl, etc. So each line is often sung by one person or two people in the frame, usually in front of a sheet or a large plain fabric. No print. Clearly, there were at least two cameras set up in front of a large piece of hanging fabric at different spots. and each actor seems to come to the spot with their props to suggest different places. And then while the other camera is on another actor, presumably the actors at the first camera were being whisked away and swapped out for a different actor with a different set of props. For instance, in front of this sheet might be a person holding, say, a bedpost that is not attached to a bed, but it gives a sense of place. That this is the boudoir where these two ladies are singing about the excitement of the upcoming ball. On a different setup in front of the camera of the same sheet, there is a clothesline that's clearly held taut by two people who are off frame, and then the actors in the frame are holding onto the clothesline near the garments and the clothespin while chatting about the ball. So clearly this scene is meant to invoke the backyard where people would have dried their clothes. So there are clever workarounds for ushering people on and off screen on a live production, but it's noticeably not a bedroom or not a backyard, etc. On to the center of it all, the romance. The romance between the prince and Cinderella sometimes feels a bit rushed, and that is not just due to the harried frenzy of live television. We see the prince dancing at the ball, so obviously bored. Then he sees a mysterious woman arrive at the top of the stairs. He locks eyes with her and has determined never to let her out of his sight. He immediately wants to marry this person. However, given that this ball is for the purpose of finding his mate, the prince can be excused for thinking of matrimony within seconds. Along the way, the obsessive love comes to her as well, but it is a little bit startling, even though we know the Cinderella story. Many of us have heard it all our lives. It's still a little bit striking that this character is so smitten so quickly. But it still works. On to the fairy godmother. Edie Adams plays this particular character, who we all know, who shows up at just the right moment to help Cinderella go to the ball. Unfortunately, though, they tasked this godmother with being cruel. Apparently, Cinderella has what she believes to be a human godmother who Cinderella recognizes instantly during her loneliness while everyone else is at the ball. Oh, hello, godmother, she says, something to that effect. I'm so glad you're here. And she sets up as though about to, invite a visitor inside. However, the godmother is actually magical, but Cinderella does not know this. When our lead character, our heroine, wishes to go to the ball, the taunting and teasing begins of fal-de-ral, fiddly-dee, and fiddly-faddly-fuddle. All the dreamers in the world are poppycock and twaddle, which is, something that, a rhetoric that distresses Cinderella, which is understandable. But after a while, the godmother relents and reveals that actually she has magic and she can give the heroine all of her wishes, the gown, the horses, attendance at the ball. By the way, Cinderella accepts that her godmother has special powers very easily. She does not seem shocked that her godmother can turn a pumpkin into a carriage in the backyard, but you go with it. The godmother continually has this pattern of helping Cinderella, but first she torments the lead, and I'm not exactly sure why. Near the end, when Cinderella is depressed that she is not allowed to see the prince, but is lurking near the palace gardens, the fairy godmother has her arrested and says to the guards, "Oh, perhaps try on the glass slipper as one last parting gift before jail." Then it is revealed that Cinderella is the one at the ball and the prince is happy to see her. So everything works out and the fairy godmother is making it happen. But first, she seems to just psychologically torture Cinderella. "I will have the guards put you in jail." Just kidding. What is going on? So I'm not exactly sure why they characterize her that way, other than that she's really leaning into the classic fairy who is more meddlesome and sinister and mischievous. In that way, Edie Adams's godmother reminds me of the sinister quality of Andrew Lloyd Webber's fairy godmother and his version of Cinderella on the West End in 2020. In that one, the godmother seems to be annoyed by Cinderella and all the people in the village who are obsessed with their appearance, but at the same time, she offers a brick-and-mortar store of fashionable clothes and cosmetic surgery. There is that tension between, I can't stand you, but fine, I'll help you. Some did not like Weber's version of the godmother for being rather unpleasant to Cinderella, but she's not the first. Edie Adams did it in 1957, so both of these are versions of the godmother leaning into the mischief of a fairy more than anything. That was rather striking. Other characters who stand out for me in the 1957 version of Cinderella were the king and queen as comic figures who were going through a midlife crisis of their bodies changing and the years going by fast. In that way, they were attempting to humanize the royals rather than making them seem fairly standoffish, which is an interesting take on them. Ultimately, the 1957 Cinderella is a lovely black and white romp of a classic tale with some of entertainment's most talented people. What has changed? What has changed since the 1950s is an increasing number of scripted television shows that are filmed. Most TV actors today are no longer expected to run through a narrative continuously, mistakes and all. You can flub a line these days and no one is the wiser, of course, because it is edited. Most of the live TV shows today remain sports-related or are the occasional award show. So I'm just so thrilled to be able to see how well all of the cast and crew did to create a live show for over an hour. It was wonderful. Recommendation. Of course, I would recommend watching the other two versions of Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella, the 1965 version, as I've mentioned before, with Leslie Ann Warren, which also aired on CBS. That set has a feel of a fairy tale book because they open with a gate that reveals a 2D castle in the distance. Also, they have access to more advanced technology, wherein they are not live. They present a filmed production of edits, so the 1965 version has more time to create substantial sets, such as a real fire in the fireplace where Cinderella sits and gets ashes or soot on her face. And then, of course, the soot is edited off with a quick jump cut. There is no more soot on her face when she's transforming into a glamorous gown for the ball. I would also recommend, of course, the 1997 version starring Brandy as Cinderella for a combination of substantial fairy tale sets like the 65 version, but also return to the quirk that the 1957 one has. In the original, everyone is comic except Cinderella and the prince. In the 1965 version, the royals and Cinderella are sober. They exude quiet elegance, except the stepmother and the sisters are quirky, showcasing how they, Cinderella's family, will not fit in with the royals, but Cinderella will. The 1997 version returns to everyone is funny except the two leads because they're too busy being in a romance. This is highlighted by the Queen, who is played by legendary comic Whoopi Goldberg, who is directed to play her in a broad fashion. So the latest version of Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella is its own thing, but it's also building on what has come before. This has been Let's Chat with Dee. See you next time.